Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar where we're going to discuss QwickAnalytics and putting the power of your data to work for you. We are in presentation mode, which means hopefully you can hear me, but we are unable to hear you. So certainly if you have questions throughout the presentation today, please submit those and we will take those at the end of the call today. We will also be sending you a copy of today's recording and a copy of the slide deck. So again, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day to join us. My name is Sean O'Brien. I'm the president of QwickRate, and I am pleased today to be joined on the webinar by Steve Huntington. Steve, as you can see, and many of you may have spoken to, is one of the primary architects of what we've built at QwickAnalytics. He does all the hard work putting together the solutions that you see, and we hope you'll find very helpful. So again, grateful to have Steve on the call today. Just a reminder, at QwickRate, we've been in the non-brokered CD marketplace business for over 30 years. In the last, 5 or 6 years, we've added the analytics. I guess it's almost 7 now. And then most recently, last summer, actually in 2019, we hired a team of credit experts to build in Telecredit. And they're all designed to try to continue to evolve what we can help you with and bring you affordable fintech solutions. So we appreciate you taking the time to learn a little bit more about how we're trying to help you. We do think they can save you time and money. As I mentioned, we've been at this since 1986 in the non-brokered CD marketplace. 2001, we actually moved QwickRate to the web. It certainly was a tremendous catalyst for our business. In 2013, we introduced QwickAnalytics, and you can see the continued enhancements that we continue to make. And we fully anticipate to continue to do it. We're excited about the tools we've developed, and they're constantly and welcome any feedback from you on what we can do to continue to improve our offering lineup. As we think about 2021, just a few things before we get started. Just kind of a state of the world where we are. Right, obviously for the banking industry, NIM was under and remains under continued pressure in 2020 and will likely be the same way in 2021. COVID-19 and the change of the administration in the White House certainly adds to some of the uncertainty that we're all facing. What the true state of our borrowers are still a little bit unknown, as the PPP loans and the COVID modifications have really masked a lot of things. So as we saw in a lot of the year-end numbers, figures and metrics like non-performers are way down, but a lot of that has been enhanced by the COVID modifications and or PPP loans. So 2021 will certainly be an interesting year as we kind of really find out where our borrowers and our credit portfolio will be. I think it'll be interesting to see where loan growth will be. Last year we saw tremendous loan growth. A lot of that was made up of PPP loans, but we did still see some really good underlying loan growth for the industry. So that's very, very encouraging. So again, I think what we're trying to do with both QwickAnalytics and in Telecredit is just give you better information and give you information that you don't have to aggregate. We believe having better information and better data will help you make better decisions and just give you more time to actually analyze things as opposed to aggregating information. As I mentioned, QwickAnalytics and Telecredit are cloud-based solutions. We're doing the hard work for you. And again, we really think we've priced these to make them affordable and worthwhile for every institution. And in many cases, we can kind of simplify the number of providers you may have offering you items, such as CECIL and stress testing and even loan review. We're going to talk about QwickAnalytics. Here are the really kind of the 3 ways we think about it. Bank and peer reporting, some interactive bank analysis, and then some regulatory tools. As I mentioned, what we're doing for you and on your behalf is really going out and aggregating all multi and varied sources of data, including call report information. We're pulling in information from credit unions. We're grabbing SEC data, information from M&A. So we're trying to find any publicly available pieces of information and bringing that all together under one solution and on your desktop. So let's just start start off by talking about some of the interactive pages. So when you log into QwickAnalytics, this is what you'd see. You'd see your home page with your bank's information at the top. On here, we've got information from the regulators. You can see the news feeds. We're having a little bit of sound quality, so I'll try to improve that. So I apologize for that, or any of you are experiencing that. I'm just going to remove that question. So we have a number of different news sources, including RSS feeds from the regulators, the St. Louis Fed, and the industry. In addition, we also have some capital market information. And so what we're doing here is we're taking the bank stocks that have a ticker symbol that you can see on the screen, and we'll show you not only the ones that are advancing, declining on the NYSE and the NASDAQ and the over-the-counter markets, and also we give you a complete listing of all the publicly traded banks at a glance. So you can click on any one of these to see more information, but we also allow you then to very quickly see how bank stocks are being valued, which includes valuations by tangible book value, last 12 months earnings, and last quarter annualized earnings. So a number of different ways where you can kind of just get a sense of where bank stocks are being valued. In addition, down here you can see we do provide you with a kind of a historical chronology of M&A transactions that you can click on, and will bring you to pages where you can see a summary of transactions that include both the buyer and the target, and then where we can grab deal metrics. We'll put together, and here you can see this little tear sheet. We'll put together a tear sheet that just had, again, publicly available pieces of information around, potentially core deposit premiums, valuation, and other valuation metrics. In addition, you can look at, and we think QwickAnalytics is a great tool for data and research. You can do it a number of different ways. One of them is just at a glance, where you can quickly select and see for a particular state all the banks in the state, and then very quickly you're able to export it to your own spreadsheet, where you can get a overview of a number of different profitability, earning, asset quality metrics on every bank in your state. So again, one of our themes is we want you to have a multiple ways to get at information. In addition, we grab deposit market share data from the FDIC. When you fill that out every year, we grab that. And again, all of our information from the call report and the deposit market share, we're grabbing data from the FDIC and the FFIC every night. And we're able to show you your bank's, not only your current market share, but also your long-term multi-year market share trend. This aids us in the ability. One of the ways you can create and create a peer group is to simply click on the bank names in your backyard. So when you think about peer groups, we want you to have as many and multiple ways to do that. Sometimes we just want to use a larger peer group, such as the UBPR or our state, but perhaps you want to just compare yourself to specific banks in your backyard. The deposit market share report is a great way for you to simply come in and click banks in your backyard and create a useful peer group. To that end as well, we also run some what we call QCBI performance trends. This will tell you each quarter what's happening both at the state and national level. You can click on that and select whether you'd like to run a national or a state report. You'll see the acronym QCBI in a number of places in QwickAnalytics. This stands for the QwickAnalytics Community Bank Index. That's our index. We use the definition of a community bank, instituted or implemented in 2012 by the FDIC. We make a few additional modifications, but really what we want to show you is, bank performance, at the community bank level. Oftentimes when the FDIC puts together, well, all the time FDIC puts information, it includes all the banks. So what you're really seeing is what the story of the largest banks. And we always want to be able to show you, pull back the curtain a little bit and see if there's a different story that's occurring, either banks of different levels or just in the community bank space on its own. And so again, this is the QCBI performance trend. When you click on your bank or my bank at the top of the page, it will now take you to a page that looks like this for your bank, and we've organized every bank in the country in this way. So it puts a number of different financial performance and credit metrics at your fingertips. again, shows you your deposit market profile, including top markets and branches. We've included holding company information, so you can see that as well. And then as you look to the bottom of the page, we start to show you on each of the pages a number of different highlights. But the one thing you'll notice is we do give you the ability to automatically on every page see your performance on a relative basis versus larger peer groups such as your UBPR peer group and your state peer group. So immediately you can see how we can save you time, because every page we've already done those calculations and comparisons for you. Okay, so moving on to the next report. Again, just talking more about the different peer reports, and again, you can access reports from the drop-down, and we give you the ability to not only see your comparisons on a most recent quarter basis, which is MRQ. You can also see a last 12 months, LTM, or even a year-to-date type of analysis. So again, more data analysis. You don't have to do it. We're doing the hard aggregation work for you to better see your numbers on a relative basis and how you compare to your peers. And we think that's important for a number of reasons, right? All of us are concerned about absolute performance, but we think it's critical for you to understand how that compares to other banks that maybe be in a peer group, particularly the UBPR, just because again that's how your regulators are viewing you from the outside. Okay, moving on to the next page. This is an additional page of the overview page, and again, what you can see here is we're always going to show you absolute performance over time, either on an annual basis or a quarterly basis. And then we'll also allow you to see where you rank within a peer group and always show you the peer median and then your percentile rank within it. So, it's very comprehensive, but you don't have to do the work to generate the information. For all these different financial performance tabs, we have pages that look like this that will allow you to put graphs at the top of the page, in addition to tabular presentation of the numbers. So you, again, can either see things on a quarterly or annual basis, compared to a peer group. An example of an asset quality summary page is here, where you and then it's below the screen here, you'd see the tabular information. All of these tabs to the left, you can create a report package from. So not only do we want to give you the ability to analyze the data in a number of different ways, we also want you to have the ability to disseminate it to varied groups within your bank. Some management teams may want more data. Boards may want something a little bit more concise. So we spent a lot of time trying to make this not only intuitively easy to use, but also give you multiple ways to distribute the information so it's met with the audience in the most effective way that you intended it to. Moving on to the next one. This is an example of what we call the performance matrix. Again, it's a different way of presenting your overview information. So you can see here to the left on the page a number of different metrics, including profitability, yield and cost, balance sheet utilization. But different from the previous page, now we're giving you more of a concise presentation where we're comparing you again still to a peer group of your choice, but you have the ability now just to see a one-page visual, which makes it maybe perfect for your board of directors, where you can again still see a peer median, top 20th percentile, bottom 20th percentile, where the bank ranks within that peer group, and then your actual rankings within that peer group. So again, just a different type of presentation of the same overview information. And we think consistency of presentation is important. We think it helps build not only understanding for your board, but seeing the information on a consistent basis every quarter. Again, we just think builds to the understanding and education of all boards of directors. This is an example of a report, our very first report at QwickAnalytics, we called the Bank Performance Report Card. This is probably our closest comparison to the UBPR report. Again, we provide you with ways to see it either in a graphical presentation or in a tabular, more historical look. Again, it'll show you peer groups, averages, and medians, ranks within the peer group. But this is a report that's great to use versus a larger peer group such as your UBPR or a state peer group. Conversely, we also have a credit matrix similar to the performance matrix. This allows you to kind of snapshot your credit information from the call report. Obviously, the call report's not the greatest source of credit information, but we can use what we have, and it does show us a few things that we think you can compare on a relative basis in terms of current credit risk, portfolio risk, and capital and preservation power. Really, what those three things do are speak to the problems that might already be existing on your balance sheet. Secondly, it'll speak to the concentrations and overall leverage of your loan portfolio, and it'll also speak to your ability to deal with problem assets in terms of absorbing losses through earnings, reserves, and capital. So, again, just kind of an initial way just to kind of take a crack at your overall credit quality compared to other institutions. We touched on a couple of different ways where you can see information versus a larger peer group. Another way of doing it is through a report we call Purewatch Trends. This is a report that you can use, and this is a snapshot of one of the pages, where you can easily compare yourself to a smaller peer group of up to 11 individually selected banks that you find as competitors. On the page, you can see we'll show you a lot of information, both in terms of most recent quarter and longer-term trends. But the nice thing about this report is you're able to see your information side by side with specific competitors. So, different from a larger peer group where you just see the overall numbers of maybe a 50 or 100 or 200 bank peer group. Here you can actually see the raw numbers of your specific competitors. I'm a director in a small community bank in Illinois. We're really a kind of a two-county bank. So this is a really effective report for us at the board level to really see how banks who are experiencing the same conditions that we're experiencing, how we look, how we compare, where we're better, where we're worse, and just look for any correlations that might be helpful to us. As I mentioned, a big part of what we do at QwickAnalytics is give you the ability to create custom peer groups. So we have functionality that allows you to do that. You can create peer groups at either the bank or the holding company level. You can select and create very small peer groups, larger peer groups. Again, we give you flexibility to do that either by geography or financial metrics. So no reason that, oftentimes we'll hear, well, there's not our business model's different from any other bank. I promise you, we've created enough peer groups. We can find banks that look like you. You just have to give us the characteristics of your bank, and we'll find you a peer group that will represent and be able to compare yourself to. As I mentioned, you can filter and create peer groups very easily. One, you can simply type in your name to add a peer group. You can do things based on geography, asset size, and then we also provide you with the ability to create them using custom filters, such as maybe you want to look at NIM or ALLL to loans, any number of different financial metrics that you can use. We also have a number of other additional regulatory reports. Steve's going to touch on those here in a second. We do have one around liquidity, designed to, again, just provide your board or your ALCO committee with a quick report that will show and compare, relative to a peer group, some early warning indicators and liquidity ratios. This is great just to put in the ALCO minutes or board minutes that will highlight that you're either within policy or maybe, or in this case, maybe not within your own policy limits. It's built on OCC director guidance. We took it straight from the director's handbook. So it's again, a tremendously relevant report. Finally, we also, for many of you who do analysis around your correspondent banks, we have a report called the Reg F Snapshot that can very quickly, minimize your time necessary to generate reports, to satisfy that Reg F due diligence that you are responsible for with your correspondent banks. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to pass the presentation over to Steve, and he's going to walk you through some of the regulatory tools that we've built, including the CECIL Solver, the credit stress test, and our capital planning tool. Steve?
Thank you, Sean. Bear with me just one moment as I share my screen. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Or I guess
good.
Good morning still for those of us joining from the left coast. Want to just spend a little bit of time digging into a little bit more detail and sharing some of the more interactive financial tools that we have in our database. So let me share this one here. First one I want to discuss for just a few minutes is our CECIL Solver. So our CECIL Solver is based on the weighted average maturity method, which is one of the more straightforward methodologies that's been approved and vetted by the various regulatory bodies for complying with CECIL. And it's a methodology that we worked with FASB and the FDIC and even the NCUA in developing the tool to make sure that it would be able to pass muster, and we've obviously got good feedback from all those various bodies in it being typical community banks and credit unions to use to comply with CECIL. The first thing that you'll notice when you pull up our interactive tools, whether it's a CECIL Solver or whether it's our interactive stress test or even our capital planning tool that I'll go through in a few minutes, is it comes pre-populated, meaning we run the entire tool in the background as soon as you log in and enter the page. Obviously, there are some default assumptions that go along with that. And what the approach that we take is we run the entire tool so you can see results immediately. And then you can go in and very quickly and easily modify and tweak those sort of inputs and assumptions, and then see interactively, sort of on a real-time basis, exactly what effect all those changes you have in the tool has on the output. It makes it sort of just a simpler way to get to what you're looking to get to and while still seeing what data has already been plugged in to begin with. So when we first pull this tool up, we'll see that all the historical financial data and loss data on your institution and your entire peer group is preloaded. The only thing that we really need any help from you guys in running the CECIL tool is helping us calculate some weighted average life calculations on the front end. And once those weighted average life calculations are plugged in on the front end, the tool really goes to work and takes care of all of what amounts to a significant amount of number crunching, all very trackable and auditable, by the way, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But we notice that CECIL requires us to estimate losses or project losses, not in any given individual year or period, but over the remaining life of the loan or remaining life of the portfolio. So our tool takes a very symmetrical approach, meaning if we have to project 5 years worth of losses on a loan type in the future, we're going to look at your experience historically over a 5-year historical period. And we're going to calculate balances and charge-offs and recoveries and calculate what amounts to a kind of life of the loan historical loss rate for your institution for every single category of loans, or risk pools as they would call them, separately and individually. Before I kind of go into any more details on the steps of the tool, I want to point out administratively how these interactive tools work. Once you've built an entire scenario, plugged in your average remaining lives and your Q factor adjustments, and modify the loan population to exclude things like government guarantees and PPP loans, and made any notes on your qualitative factor adjustments, which we have a great little administrative tool to sort of attach notes to any loan type as we go along here. You can save all those inputs as a scenario, and you can see at the top of the screen here, you can save them. You can create as many scenarios as you'd like. They are saved on our secure servers and available to you in the cloud anytime you want to see them. And you can export the tool, although you'll find these interactive tools, this interactive environment that we've designed is very intuitive and convenient for modifying the inputs and assumptions and then sort of seeing in real time what the outputs are. It's not quite as practical, obviously, for sharing, right, the results of your report externally with an auditor or an examiner. So wherever you are on the system, you'll notice all the pages that Sean already went through on the interactive site, and everything we're going to go through. Access to peer data and custom peer groups that you've built is everywhere throughout the platform, as is the ability to export the data into pretty much any format that you like. Whether you want to pull a page or a table or an entire CECIL report or a stress test into an Excel environment or into a PowerPoint environment even, or into an attractive PDF. Those are all very simple to do with a single click of a button from wherever you are throughout the platform. Just wanted to sort of point that out. getting back to the CECIL Solver specifically, once we've calculated your historical sort of life of the loan loss rate, the second piece of the puzzle is always the fun part with CECIL, right? And with reserve accounting in general, and that's the Q factors, right? Those qualitative factor adjustments. And we found that, I mean, you'll find that, CECIL has not removed subjectivity from the loan loss reserve accounting by any means. It's sort of changed it and molded it a little bit, but it's still there. And so you need some sort of guidance or help for establishing and modifying qualitative factor adjustments over time. And we provided a number of tools to do that. One of the ways the regulators suggest to do that is by using environmental factors. And by that, they mean looking at economic trends over time and trying to find correlations between those economic trends and your loss history at a risk pool level or a loan category level. And that can be very challenging for an individual community bank or credit union to do. It's easy for big mega banks like Bank of America to do because of their sample size of loans is so and of losses is so high. But for a typical individual community bank, some other methodology, honestly, is necessary for qualitative factor adjustments when the environmental factors fall short. And our tool really focuses on helping you with that as well. And the best way that we can do that is by looking at your peers' experience. So again, integrating that peer information into this tool, just like we do into the rest of the QwickAnalytics offerings. And so once we have a historical rate on your institution, we compare that to, we build an analysis for your entire peer group where we calculate their life of the loan loss rates over your custom look back periods by loan type. Let me show you what I mean by that just briefly here. And this is one of the other tabs in our CECIL tool. And we can visualize your peer group's loss experience over multiple economic cycles by loan category with your durations. This is for this sample bank. Obviously, their mortgage loans are going to have a longer duration, so you can see those green bars are a visual depiction of the remaining life of the portfolio for your institution. And we can look and compare your life of the loan loss estimates with your peer groups on a perfectly apples to apples basis, and use that to help our qualitative factor adjustments. And that's a bit of an innovative approach, I think, from our perspective, but very helpful in Q factor adjustments when those economic trends tend to be less so when you have a small sample size of losses. Another thing we've added into the tool, and this is brand new actually, just as of, I believe, last week, we added a new tab to the CECIL tool. We wanted to give you even more options for visualizing this. We realized we're throwing these big, large tables worth of data at you and helping you guys to wrap your heads around and sharing it with your not just the management team, but your board as well, and helping everyone understand, what CECIL means and how do we visualize these, life of the loan calculations. This new tab allows you to choose any one of your loan types, and then we visualize your trend over the long term, your peer group's trend over that same period, and your look back period, which is this sort of gray shaded area, is a look back period. And then the orange line is your kind of life of the loan CECIL estimate. So you can see for this sample bank here, for their first lien 1 to 4 family resi mortgages, their loss history over the long run has pretty closely mirrored the other community banks in their state. I believe the state is Maine. And then you see over a 7-year sort of remaining life of the loan, you can see what their CECIL estimate is, and it sort of makes sense that it's obviously going to be a lot higher than their losses in any one individual year or even 2 years. But that's just we thought a helpful way to be able to visualize those trends for each category. The next tool that I want to spend a little time on is what we call our credit stress test. And we built our original credit stress test a few years ago. It's been out there for a good while, and we've got lots and lots of community banks who have been relying on it. And we felt that, especially in light of building that newer CECIL tool that was much more interactive in its design, we felt it was time to sort of take a lot of the good customer feedback that we're always getting on our stress test, what people like about it, what they don't like about it, what they think can be improved. We aggregated all that together and then decided we wanted to sort of rebuild our stress test in this more intuitive, interactive environment. The concept and the methodology is the same as it always has been for credit stress testing. That really hasn't changed very much. But there's some, there's always new things going on with the regulators and with the accounting industry that forces us to stay with the times with all of our, especially our more interactive or in-depth modeling type tools. And one of those things obviously is, PPP and COVID loans. So the ability to, break out and separately exclude your PPP and COVID loans wherever they are in your portfolio, typically C&I loans, but they can be elsewhere as well, so that you're not, establishing a reserve for a loan type that you don't need to, right? Or calculating net charge-offs on a loan that you're not going to see any net charge-offs for because of its guaranteed status or its forgivable status. And so those are the types of things that we're always making sure constantly that we're building into our tools as soon as they become, we become aware of them. For our stress test, you can see up top, again, just like with the CECIL tool, once you've plugged in all your inputs, you can save it as a scenario, and you'll save these scenarios over time so you can see how the results of your CECIL or your stress test, how they're migrating, right? As we get closer to CECIL implementation, is your CECIL reserve increasing or decreasing depending upon recent changes in your loss history or peer group or whatnot. Same thing with stress testing. The ability to save a couple different scenarios. Maybe you have a different peer group in a second scenario, or maybe you have more punitive stress scenarios in a scenario A or a scenario B. But the ability to track them over time and sort of build a repository of stress tests or CECIL calculations is imperative, and our tool allows you to do that pretty intuitively. So what we're doing with the stress test, we run 3 completely separate and independent tests as a part of our stress test tool. The first test, it's called test 1, is what we call the peer group loss experience. And that's where we are aggregating the loan loss history of all the banks in your peer group in each category of loans separately. And we are looking at those losses over a bunch of different historical time periods. For example, a recent baseline or healthy period, right? And then the mean of a last credit cycle as for our stress scenarios. And then we're trying to apply that to your loan portfolio going forward, meaning we're trying to answer the basic question. If your portfolio, the way it's structured, if it were to perform for the next couple of years going forward, like your peers did in these various historical environments, right? Healthy, adverse, and then worst case scenario, what would be the pro forma impact on your P&L and on your capital? So we are, in effect, completely reprojecting your income statement and your capital levels going out into the future in all 3 different scenarios of stress, sort of on a side-by-side basis. This page you're seeing here is the first page that pops up when you load the tool up. So again, the entire thing is run in the background before you even get here. And there are obviously some default assumptions built into that, which I'm about to get to. And as you change those inputs, you see there's the 2 big buttons at the top here for between the results and the inputs. So you can constantly sort of toggle back and forth between changing your inputs and then clicking on the results and seeing them being recalculated before your eyes, literally, which is very helpful in the sort of iterative process that is stress testing. Let me go into some of the inputs here. Before we walk through the outputs for a minute, I'd like to just kind of point out some of the major inputs and improvements that we've made in the tool. So when I click on customize inputs, I'm given a couple different options for areas that I'm going to be inputting data. First, financial projections. I'm going to be, since we are reprojecting income statement and capital levels, we need to have some baseline idea of how you expect to perform going forward. Obviously, everything that's credit related, right, like your loan loss provisions and your reserve levels and gains or loss on OREO, that we are going to reproject as part of the tool. But we need to get a baseline idea of your growth assumptions going forward, and that's in the financial projections page. Then we also ask you to customize a loan portfolio if you so desire, which means, again, that critical element of stripping out any PPP loans from wherever they are in your portfolio, so we're not reserving against them or calculating charge-offs against them unnecessarily, and some other assumptions as well. Another important part of the inputs here are the peer inputs. So just like everywhere else on the platform, you have the ability to choose a UBPR peer group, a state community bank peer group, or any of the custom peer groups you've built on our platform, and you can access them just like you can anywhere else. And then you're also going to want to customize your look back periods. For a baseline scenario, we're probably using, the last couple years, right? Because net charge-offs, at least from a peer group or industry-wide standard, have been pretty benign over the last couple years. But for stress scenarios like the adverse and severely adverse, we want to get an idea of a loss of a look back period from the meat of the last credit cycle, circa 2009, 10, 11, plus or minus. But now we have a slider here, so you can simply click on the look back period and drag it across and make it as long. You can have it be 2 years, you can have it be 5 years, and you can customize that look back period for your peer group. And as you choose different peer groups, all the data in the table below gets updated in real time. The other ability that we sort of added into the tool here is we gave you some more granularity in how punitive you want the stress scenarios to be. For example, in an adverse scenario, we're looking at, say, 75th percentile loss rates, right, across the board. But you can now go in and sort of fine tune if you want to stress your C&I portfolio more or less than the rest of your portfolio in an adverse or severely adverse setup. You can do so. So we give you a little bit more kind of sharpen the point there a little bit. So jumping back, let's say I've gone ahead and customized those inputs, and now I want to go back and kind of look at my test results. We were on the summary page a minute ago, but now we can sort of look into the details of these outputs. And those details are A, using the peer group information to reproject our losses, and then B, using those loss numbers to reproject our earnings, income, and then C, finally using those new income numbers, projections to reproject capital and the capital impact. This is an example of that second of those 3 pages, the earnings impact. And you can see here all 3 scenarios. We're always showing the scenarios side by side. And we're reprojecting your loan loss provisions and OREO losses or gains and everything else for each scenario. As you can see, losses ramp up and provisions ramp up as the scenarios get more punitive. Another thing I wanted to kind of point out is that third test. So again, the first test is your peer group loss experience. The second test we run has all the same steps as the first test. The bank loss experience is the same methodology and the same steps. However, instead of using our peers' historical experience, we're looking at our historical experience, right? So we're asking trying to answer a similar question. And that question is, if our loan portfolio going forward were to perform like it did during these historical environments, what would be the pro forma impact, right? So again, we're still calculating and reprojecting earnings and capital, but as if we were to perform like we did during the last credit cycle, not our peers. But the third test is a little bit of a different animal. It's what they call a reverse stress test. It's what I fondly refer to as the how much rope do we have to hang ourselves with test. And they call it a reverse stress test because it's literally sort of taking the steps that we just went through in the other 2 tests and running them backwards. Instead of reprojecting losses and using that to then reproject earnings and using that to then finally reproject capital, we're starting at a set capital level, like the minimum to be well capitalized or the minimum to be adequately capitalized. And we're working backwards to figure out what levels of losses could we sustain in our portfolio before our capital were to drop below these critical thresholds. And so that's exactly what we calculate here. We let you know how much you can afford to charge off over the next couple of years before you drop below well capitalized or adequately capitalized. We've also added in an internal capital minimum target, meaning that you can choose a capital level. Let's say you have pretty high capital and you have some internal targets or benchmarks that you must meet. If you drop below 12 or 11% total risk-based capital, from an internal standpoint, you need to address it. And so you can plug in those internal minimums and then calculate exactly what it would take loss-wise and everything for you to drop to that level. A popular level people type in, and which is our default, is that 10.5% total risk-based ratio. For those of you who are still filling out the risk-based capital portion of the call reports and are heavy dividend payers, or for US Corps out there, that 10.5% capital conservation buffer minimum, right, is a critical level to stay above at 10.5%. So that may be something that you want to separately identify. Switching gears and moving to our capital planning tool. This is another of the more interactive tools. The outputs of this tool are still presented in a PDF or Excel format, but the inputs are very interactive. This is designed to be a long-term time horizon planning tool where we build a relatively straightforward growth scenario, right? Balance sheet growth and earnings growth scenario and dividend scenario as well. And we use that, and the tool projects over the long run what effect this growth scenario will have on all of your regulatory capital calculations, and keeps very close track of your capital conservation buffer over time, so that you know, can we afford to keep growing the balance sheet by 10% with a 90 basis point ROA and pay out 30% dividends? Are we going to have a problem 4 years from now? Or are we going to run afoul of our capital conservation buffers if we maintain that growth rate? Or again, if you're an S corp and you want to make, obviously making sure you're paying those distributions and continue doing so is extremely important and something you're never taking your eye off of that ball. Some sort of tool to make sure that what you have expectation-wise from a growth standpoint won't cause a problem there is critical. So these again are the inputs for the capital planning tool. You can plug in things on a percent basis and have it recalculate all the dollars, or you can plug in total asset growth or dollar amounts or anything else, and it will kind of go upstream and recalculate what percent growth that means. So pretty intuitive here on the input side. A couple of the output pages, just so you get an idea of what this report is really designed to help you with, is once you have a growth scenario, it's going to project or show you 5 years worth of all of your regulatory capital projections in percents, and then it's going to do a little surplus deficit analysis, meaning if you're projected to have a 10.18% total capital ratio, 2 years from now, how much above that 10% minimum are we in dollars, right? What does that 10.18% mean? And so we calculate again in dollars how far above or below the adequately capitalized and well capitalized minimums you really are. So you get an idea of if we do need to raise capital going forward. And by the way, it's designed to be a very iterative tool, meaning if you create a growth scenario, which leaves you, let's say, this is a $5 billion bank, so kind of larger than a typical community bank, leaves you $40 million in the hole a few years out, or pretend that's maybe 4 million is more relevant. You go back to the inputs and you can plug in additional capital at any point during the projection scenario, whether it's common stock, whether it's preferred stock, or even sub-debt, and then reiterate the tool so you can see if that additional capital 3 years out then leaves you higher than where you need to be. So you can go back and forth in the inputs and the outputs of the capital planning tool. Another one of the outputs of this tool is, keeping an eye on those capital conservation buffers. As we know, we have to calculate 3 buffers, one on each of your risk-based capital ratios. And then, of course, the worst or the lowest of those is the only one that counts, right? That's the qualifying buffer. And tracking that over time out into the future is critical. So we help do that in this scenario. And then we show, if you're going to have some sort of a payout minimum or payout restriction in the future, exactly what that restriction might be. And then we suggest how much capital might be needed and when to alleviate that concern. So that's the design of the capital planning tool. Sorry, switching gears again. I know I'm bouncing around between different tools within the platform a little bit, but everything that we went through that Sean went through and that I've gone through today, all those interactive pages, all these more interactive tools, you can export that data into an Excel environment so that if you want to pull it into another presentation or use some of that data and put it into an Excel-based tool, you can do that. However, that's sort of pulling or pushing data down into Excel. On the other hand, we have built a tool directly in Excel which allows you to access any of the data that we have in our database. Meaning, so it's something you download off the website right on once you've logged in, there's a button there for download the Excel add-in. And when you do that, you'll have a new tab right in Excel that has all these buttons on it. It allows you to log in to QwickAnalytics. You click on there, you type in the same login that you have for QA, and it doesn't take you to our website. You stay directly in Excel, and then you can search for institutions, create peer groups, You can pull down any of the peer groups you've created in QwickAnalytics. So if you want to see some information about each of the peers in a pre-built peer group that you've created in QA and do it in Excel, you can just come right here, log in, find one of the peer groups you've already built, and then display all those institutions and then whatever data you want in them. But again, every data point on every bank and holding company, and now credit union too. That's new. Just as of this week, we've added credit union data, comprehensive credit union data into the Excel add-in tool. But what it allows you to do, again, search for institutions, do screens, create peer groups, or pull up pre-built peer groups. And in this particular part of the tool, you would download a large group of peers, and then you can do screening based off of it. You can pull any specific financial data you want. You can open up, and if you have a tool that you already have in Excel where you want some historical data pulled into specific spots within your Excel model or peer data, you can build it that way too. So all you would have to do is you open up your own model, let's say a quarter later, change the date and hit one refresh button, and then your entire model directly in Excel updates with any other newer data that we have in our data source. So it's very integrative into any Excel tools or models that you already have internally built. This is an example of how you would get that data. Let's say you pulled a list of institutions from a peer group directly into Excel, and now you wanted to handpick a bunch of ratios or data points. You can search for fields right there in the search box. We have all the fields in our database are pretty well categorized here: highlights, balance sheet, yield, cost, asset quality, liquidity, et cetera, et cetera. And you can do it over any historical periods that you want as well. Now, this is a kind of a good screening tool if you have a lot of peers and a handful of financial data points that you want. On the other hand, a lot of times people want to pull detailed data about their institution or about a small handful of peers. So for example, instead of having a few fields as rows and a bunch of banks down a column, you want to have just a whole balance sheet on your bank. Like let's say 6 quarters worth of an income statement or 6 quarters worth of a balance sheet on your bank, just right in one single tab. We've created what we call sort of pre-built templates. This is where you search for your bank or for a competitor, and then you can choose, balance sheet or income statement or loan portfolio or asset quality, and add those templates to this, and then you over whatever periods you want, and then you download the data, and it populates pretty much instantaneously directly into Excel. You can do this just for your bank, or you can do it on a side-by-side basis. I know as Sean was showing you some of the pre-built templates that we have on the interactive site. If you wanted what we call the Purewatch report, right? That type of a template, you can rebuild that directly in Excel pretty quickly. And yeah, so that's the Excel add-in tool. We're very excited about that. And then finally, something else that we just recently added here. We're looking for as many ways as possible to help you not only see these trends, but help you visualize this stuff over time. And visualize not only your data, but your peers' data, and also economic trends. That's something that, under CECIL, if we can't find any good economic data to use for Q factors, then we use peer data, right? But we want to also be able to see some of those economic trends if they're going to be integrated into something like reserve accounting. So this new tool is on our site now. It allows you to choose really any credit metric, whether it's charge-offs, recoveries, past dues, non-accruals, what have you, for any loan type. In this particular example, I've just chosen total 1 to 4 family residential loans, and plot that trend over the short term or the long term, whether it's 12 years or 6 quarters. Choose a peer group. Again, any of your custom peer groups that you want, or a QCBI, which is community bank type peer group, or even a UBPR peer group. And then the nice thing is, on top, we can overlay on top of those long-term credit trends, full cycle or multi-cycle trends, economic data. So we pull down some of the more important economic time series from Federal Reserve, from Fred, their database. And so you can choose things like national unemployment rate or statewide unemployment rate from your state, or GDP growth, or some other of those, better economic long-term indicators. And we can overlay that directly over your and your peer group's credit trends over time. So for example, this is an institution in again, in Maine. And so we plotted their long-term trends. We plotted all the community banks in Maine, sorry, is the green line there. And then this red trend, I just chose unemployment rate for the state of Maine. So we see those trends visualized here. And again, down below that, we see all the detailed data and calculations, which is great. It shows how we calculate net charge-off ratio, and then all the numerators and denominators for all three of these time series right here in the interactive environment. And again, just like everywhere else on the platform, where you see it interactively, you can download all the supporting data. So in 2 clicks, or I think just 1 click, you can pull that data directly into Excel. So you see there's 3 tabs here. The first one is for the bank, second one is the peer group, third one is the unemployment rate, and we can get all the data points, the numerators and denominators and calculations that go into those trends directly into an Excel environment. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Sean.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Thank you all again. My screen ready here. So, I think one of the challenges we always have with QwickAnalytics is just, there's so much in it that even in a webinar like this where we try to consolidate things and try to make it summarized and just easier to understand, you can see we've built a number of we think are very exciting and helpful tools in there that we think can benefit a number of different people in the bank. For QwickAnalytics, we think for the management team, right? Again, I think the biggest things we're doing for you is we're relieving you or someone on your team of trying to aggregate data. I think as you hopefully you saw, you can go from the very summarized to the very detailed, and anywhere in between. You get to kind of choose the level of complexity or detail that you want to share. But I think the important thing is bringing to the surface a lot more information that's valuable, we think, to not only you but to your management team and to your boards. And so we just want you to be able to access that whenever you want. So we think that that's some of the things that QwickAnalytics can do for you effectively. For your boards, we think it can help in the presentation of information to you, right? I think we're always big believers that you want your boards to be strategic. You want to make sure that they're contributing. A lot of times, we spend a lot of our time kind of focusing on what's happened in the past at our board meetings, and what we want you to be able to do is to not only do that, but then also be able to spend more time strategically thinking and having that good peer data, having your good information historically about your bank. All those things we think in a kind of a clear, concise way, we think again can just raise the level of not only your directors but just the ongoing board meeting. So we think this is a way to enhance the information that you share, and again compare yourself critically to meaningful peer groups. Again, the UBPR is one that we often all use primarily because that's what our regulator uses, and so we should be aware of that. But we should be able to try to compare ourselves to banks that we're either competing with, trying to emulate, see top performers. Let's find the banks that can help us improve our performance and utilize them on a regular basis. I just want to, we've touched a lot, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this. I do want to invite you to learn more, not only about QwickAnalytics, but in Telecredit. For those of you who don't know, it's an additional cloud-based solution we've built that includes a portfolio analyzer and a smart loan review tool. We also are available for external loan reviews. Again, I think just to summarize what we're trying to do is bring, in this case, your good data that's idiosyncratic and and known to your bank, and allow you to better organize it, to query it, to build reports from it, and just take advantage of the reports that your information. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. We think it's got clear benefits for your credit and risk officers. We think for your management teams and your boards. Again, I'd encourage you to learn more about it. When you're quoting your next loan review, give us a shot. We can show you not only we can do an external loan review, but we can show you how these tools can bring even more value to the loan review process. So, just wrapping up, again, we appreciate all your time you gave us today. We think 2021 is going to be an interesting year, right? There's a lot of things that are improving. There's still some uncertainty. We just want to try to give you some additional tools to help navigate that more efficiently. I think a lot of times, as you saw today, whether it's CECIL, whether it's a credit stress test, whether it's peer reports, a lot of times, we may pay a consultant or a vendor to do those things. And what QwickAnalytics really provides is the ability for you to have all of that for probably less than you're paying a consultant or an accountant or some other vendor, all under one application. So we really do believe we not only built good tools, we priced them affordably so that banks of all sizes can take advantage of them. So I certainly, as we close here today, I'd encourage you, to see your own data live. Get out there and demo it. Hopefully, we gave you and found something within the presentation that would be of interest to you. But there's a whole lot more, so we'd really welcome the opportunity to to spend a little bit more time with you and go through your data specifically and see how we can help. I'm going to check to see if we have any questions. Don't not appear that we have any additional ones outside the sound problems we had earlier. So again, I apologize if any of you experienced any audio difficulties hearing me or Steve today. Again, want to thank you for your time today. Appreciate you working with us at QwickRate. Invite you to learn more about QwickAnalytics and in Telecredit. And I hope wherever you are, you're safe today. And we'll look forward to hearing from you soon. Thanks so much. I'll leave this screen up for any of you who want to reach out and schedule a demo today. Thanks so much. Bye now.